Physical theatre, it's the one that clearly Jacques Lecoq started as a théâtre de mouvement, which is based much more in working with different styles of theatre, but starting from your physicality and the improvisation. A organizer that were running a temporary museum at the South Bank, so very, strategic location in London, saw the performance. I invited her, hoping. She came to Scotland. She was fascinated, and that was our first commission. I think art has a real healing power, and I think if the connection with our audience is really truthful, it does create this energy and healing power. So that is what keeps me going.
Welcome to the Theatre Art Life podcast. Today we're talking with Daniela Essart.
Daniela is the co-founder and artistic director of Scarabeus Aerial Theatre since 1988 and has created visually arresting and transformative performances side by side to stage and screen films. Scarabeus' work merges aerial skills with visual theatre and choreographed movement. They conjure into existence thought-provoking productions dealing with contemporary narratives aimed at awakening empathy and ethical consciousness in a wide range of audiences and viewers. Daniela, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be in the show.
Wonderful. So Daniela, I was reading a little bit about you before the podcast today, and you have a wide history of training physical theatre, acrobatics, stilts, and yoga. But you grew up in the Italian Alps, and you started by trekking and free climbing. So I want to ask you, what was that guided you into theatrical work and theatrical performance?
I think I did some amateur production as you do as a teenager, and I was good at it. And I also did quite a bit of gymnastics as a child and as a teenager. As you have spotted, I was brought up near the Alps, and I did trekking since I was a child, and also started to do harness and climbing with harness. And I think all of that is some of what brought me to do theatre. When I finished my degree, my secondary school, that was about, to become an early year teacher, I decided to do a degree in film and theatre. And then at the same time, 5 pupils of Jacques Lecoq opened a school that did the 2 years program of Lecoq in Torino, which was the city where at that point I was living and working. And so I started to attend that program, and that was it. There was no return back. And at the same time, I was paying through my university, also doing part-time work as an early year teacher. And but clearly, again, I must have been pretty good, because my teachers, that they were from various European countries, started to choose me to go on a number of European exchange theatre exchanges. And it started to become quite dissonant, my life as an early year teacher and wanted to do theatre full time. And then for a number of coincidences, I got a contract in London for 6 months. And I packed everything and I came to London thinking I will be here for 6 months and then I'm going back home. And well, I lived longer in London than in Italy by now. And I was 25.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's
And
fascinating how those things happen, right? We never know which is the one that's just that which door's gonna open and there's not gonna be a way back. You're just gonna go and it's gonna be what it is.
Exactly. You know, I really did not plan to spend my life in London. I have a real love-hate relationship with London. It's home, but also is fundamentally not the place where I really would choose to live if I would starting again, but is the place that has offered me incredible opportunities. And,
so what was that first job that took you to London? What was that first offer?
the first offer was linked again with my teachers, and I became assistant of a physical theater school here for 3 months. So it was not a performing job at the beginning, but was more working with the physical theater. But from there, one of my teachers invited me in a project that was happening in France, in Metz, again, European funding project, where a number of companies from different countries, they were going to create a small performance that was going to be able to come back and tour in the countries that we were from. And that is where I met Soren, that was with the Danish company. And so clearly Soren went back to Denmark, I went back to London. And then that year, which was 88, in the summer, there was here in London the first New Circus Festival. Do you remember at the time, now it's called Contemporary Circus, but at the time used to be called New Circus, and was the very first one. I think it was Adrian Evans that organized it. So I cunningly invited Soren, and he came again with the idea of spending the 2 weeks of the festival and going back to Denmark. But what he actually did is went back to Denmark, took 2 more suitcases, and came to live in London with me. And then from there, we started the company. We started our first show, which was called Ballettico Fantastico, which was a parody of Swan Lake on stilts. Which we toured it for 5 years, and it really went all over the world, and television, all sort of things, all sort of places. Clearly appealed a lot to a lot of people. And then from there, we still are here running the company together, and we also have a son together.
That's nice.
That's amazing.
It's like a fairy tale. Could you explain for our audience and those who don't really understand what would be the difference between regular theater, physical theater, and then you do aerial theater, and how those intersect?
Yes. Regular theater, I would define it more for what is the traditional theater, so proscenium march stage, text-based, with actors that are very good at language and speech and everything, much less physically oriented. Physical theater, it's the one that clearly Jacques Lecoq started as a théâtre de mouvement, which is based much more in working with different styles of theater, but starting from your physicality and the improvisation. Aerial theater, or also for some companies, aerial dance, for us is more aerial theater. It's a combination of using a very physical, I would say really extreme physicality approach, having a narrative in our performances, and using various aerial skills. Some could be the ones that are more known, like trapeze or silks or rope. Or in our case, at the beginning we used harness a lot, and we did quite a lot of big size-specific work on buildings. So using maybe the history or the meaning of a building, and basically inhabiting most of the time the facade of a building, or working in a forest, working with trees. So which was mainly outdoors. That's how we started, and at that point became quite site specific. Now that in the last decade, we've also created a number of performances who have been touring indoors. We often also create our own apparatus. So we use a combination of aerial skills that are well known and apparatuses that we may test and create ourselves, which they clearly become an intrinsic part of the content and the narrative of the performance. It will be the equivalent for traditional theater of a set, just that those are usually suspended and they can do quite a lot of things. I hope I answered the question.
You did, yeah, absolutely. And with the starting of your company, and even to today, the question is, it's so casual. You say start a company. How is this company funded, supported? Do you raise money? How does the functioning of your theatre company work?
Oh, at the beginning, you're two performers. You are in love. You think you are indestructible and you can do anything. And I think really in that spirit and that spirit of creativity, you can do anything. You are invulnerable, young, we were 25, 26. So we were basically, we created the performance out of nothing, Ballettico Fantastico, by a costume designer friend that basically made the costumes, with very little money. We were very lucky because a number of people in the UK, outdoor sector starting to notice us, and they were curious. We were very different. So that worked in favor and disfavor. So we were basically, with the fees that we were earning performing, we were able to be able to sustain ourselves around 6 months of the year. And we were only Søren and I and a third person. So we also didn't have a base, anything. We had the minimum expenses. Everything was stored underneath the bed or in the hall in the home, as everyone starts. Clearly, when we started, and then the other, because, touring will be around 6 months. The other 6 months, we did all sorts of jobs, I taught quite a lot. I was very lucky because I have done a lot of commedia dell'arte in Italy, and with people that were very good. So I started to get jobs in a number of theater courses, and what else I did? Some modeling. I modeled for a woman painter that adored me and was good, was paying me very well. And I could come and go. And she was safe, And Søren also did quite a lot of jobs, a bit of teaching, a bit of modeling, and also working in one of the first organic shops in London. So we were also able to eat because we were able to have food at discount, which was very good. And we lived in a short life housing co-op, which means that the rent was very low. And then when nearly 7 or 8 years later, we wanted to create our first mid-scale show, then we really needed to become proficient with fundraising. And I mean, but by that time, we were well known enough. And of course, I remember the first applications to the Arts Council were a disaster. Was no. And particularly here in UK was, what is combined arts? What do you actually do? Circus was not even in the list of the Arts Council, new circus or contemporary circus. But we managed to get a bit of funding. I remember our first big project was Arboreal, which was about deforestation and climate change. And I'm talking 1998. I'm talking more than, 20 years ago. We were already exploring that. And was a project that we did with a project of reforestation that was happening in Scotland. So we got money from Scottish Arts Council, from London Arts Board that doesn't exist anymore, and from an European funding, because we were collaborating with an Italian composer and musician and an amazing rock climber from France. And then from there, we had to rise a notch. We had to learn to fundraise. We had to learn the admin work was fundamental to keep a company going. And we couldn't just spend all our time training and in rehearsal spaces.
And now a note from our sponsor. The Theatre Art Life podcast is proud to be sponsored by ClearCom. ClearCom is the leader in voice communications for theatre and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of ClearCom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out.
I'm really intrigued on, because it's really fascinating, and you're speaking like a true artist, right? That like this is like you just make it work, whatever it takes, and you did, and you've come to create fantastic work. And then how do you thread all those things to be able to create? I guess my question is, how do you create, and how do you choose all these themes? But also, since you're working, especially at the beginning, that you started working with in situ, more like site-specific stuff, how do you get permits? How do you get people to let you do things? How do you get to do a good assessment of the space? How do you pitch all this idea? I don't know. Many questions. It's very fascinating.
So I subdivide the two things because they're completely different. So site-specific, well, that happened with Arboreal, with the performance that I was mentioning before. That was about deforestation. A organizer that were running a temporary museum at the South Bank, so very, strategic location in London, saw the performance. I invited her, hoping. She came to Scotland. She was fascinated, and that was our first commission. And because it was a temporary museum and a really fantastic building, like a disused warehouse that was being used for this project, our first performance was, so museum means the seat of the muses. So we found at the time 9 aerialists, of which some they had to be trained, because literally at that time, there were not enough people that did vertical dance or that kind of work. We were one of the pioneering companies, and that is actually now a number of people that we trained at the time and worked with us for a few years. Now they have their own successful company. But we were really, I would say, the first in the UK doing that kind of work. So we worked with basically our booker, the person that was booking us, on this concept of the idea of that was the seat of the muses. We literally attached to the walls, because the building would have been refurbished, 9 seats at a certain level. And the performance, started as a lot of upsailing performances from the terraced roof to get to the place where the muses were sitting. But clearly, each muse has got her own history because, there is the tragedy, the muse of love, the muse of time. And so we researched the characteristics and we created what now I will think was such a basic choreography. But at the time, nobody else was doing it. So it was spectacular. We had one of the best lighting designers in UK that now unfortunately has died, but since then worked in all of our major shows because he loved our work. So we were well lit. We had a fantastic soundtrack. And from there, clearly, you start to have a little, you can put it on your CV. And then we went to Natural History Museum. So, a completely, super historical, a building that, is completely A-listed. But again, the organizer there who had seen the show at the Museum of, really wanted to have us. So we started to create the assessment together. And she discovered that the Earth side of what is called the Earth Gallery, which is basically one of the facade of the Natural History Museum because it's huge as a museum, had been upsailed before because has been upsailed for cleaning. And there were already rigging points. So we started from there. We learned on the job. And the more you have a good collaboration with the people that are commissioning you, and we have to clearly do our risk assessment, method statement, prove that we know how do we do the job, how do we minimize the risk, what do we do if someone is stuck, how are you going to rescue? But if you have a good promoter that is commissioning us, means that they will take all of that documentation and their own documentation and will clear with a council, if it's a council building or if it's a heritage building, like in those cases. Same when we worked in forests. We would have the All Forestry Commission, coming to check that we didn't do any damage to the show. And clearly, we use methods that we absolutely don't ruin trees or anything. So that is quite, it's really about, I'll tell you a good story. When we had a board member that then went back. She was a cultural organizer and was originally from Trinidad, went back to Trinidad and became the cultural organizer at the British Council for Performance. So having been a supporter of Scarabeus, decided that we are going to do a project there. And she said to me, come here for a week. That is where the cost of the flight is, is the cheapest. And I'll get you a driver and myself. We drive through Trinidad. You find the place that you want to perform, and we do. So we drive most of the week. I saw all the turtles, every single thing. I didn't spend much time at the beach, by the way. I had to wean off Naisa of breastfeeding, everything before I went. And the last place we went was in the jungle. Now, the jungle outside Port of Spain, which is the capital of Trinidad, it used to be an American base. So had a satellite receiver. And I'm talking, if you go on our website, you will see what I mean. Like a satellite dish, but we are talking 30 meters high. And with a span, the chalice of the dish must have been 20 meters or so. And I said, that is the one I would like. And she looked at me and said, Daniela, this is the one that will be no go. I mean, clearly the Americans were not there anymore in the base, but, in the jungle. But, and I just say, yes, we can do it. Well, in 3 months, 2 women that really want to decide to get something done, we were there doing doing the show. And I still thinking is the best location we ever had for site specific.
That's amazing. I love that. Since you've done all of those things in so many different places, are you or is Soren like adept at rigging, or you have a team that know how to rig all this stuff in these strange locations? How does that work?
Yes, we have a team. Soren, so we both started as performers, but when we had Naisa, our child, we also discovered that Scarabeus was not our baby anymore. She was the baby. And Scarabeus was a vehicle to be able to, I would say, really complete what is our mission in life, possibly, but it was different. So I started to perform much less and direct more. And Soren did the same. He possibly still performed for around 2 years, but also started to become specialized at rigging. And now we always work in collaboration with other riggers. So whatever show we do, we will have a minimum 2 riggers on a show, if it's a touring show. If it's a site-specific, you normally calculate to have on the roof or wherever you are, if you are a boat, to have a rigger each 2 performers. So depending how many performers you have got. And now, as you know, also that industry of working at height and everything has been developing much more. So there are really good expertise. Although the riggers that we tend to employ, most of them started as performers. So, and because in a lot of our shows, particularly the touring shows, when we change apparatus or the apparatus are moving, it really becomes a choreography between the performers and the technical side. It's really good to have riggers that have also been performers, because they really know how to behave on stage and do a very smooth work. And they are really safe. They also understand during rehearsals that, any aerial skills is quite extreme. If you use harness and you're counterweighting someone, there is a point that your abdominals, your back, everything is screaming, for a rest. And yeah, it's a real collaboration between the technical side and the performing side. And the same is with composers, when we have worked with scientists. We've done very varied work. When I think about it, today I was trying to make a list of some of the work that I thought, if they ask me, I mention this key work. I was just thinking they were really varied.
And other than it was very varied, what was your takeaway from working on this list and putting all this information together for yourself?
You mean information in terms of collaboration? Or?
Yeah, like while you were doing this list and going through this process, and you realized it was very varied, but I'm sure you came into, like, it was a process while you were reflecting on your work. Were there any takeaways?
Yes, I was thinking, I always said, apart from when you are commissioned, and, there was a period actually where we did quite a lot of corporate work. So that means that we knew exactly why we were doing it, because that was subsidizing our artistic work. And also we were able to take extracts of our artistic work and to use them in a corporate sector. But when it's about our work, I always say I can't create a show if I don't have something to say. And it usually comes that there is a really strong feeling in my heart that I really need to talk to an audience or about something. And I don't become obsessed, but I become so enthused. And so I start to research. And then from there, 3 years later, usually, it becomes a performance. Because also from when one has got the very heart of an idea to the process of finding the right team, getting the funding together for research and development, proving that the research and development went well, booking a tour so you can fund for the production, and finally get it on stage, or if it's outdoors, wherever it's going, there is usually a 3-year process. So one really needs to be wanting to talk about that particular topic, and is really important. So I realized that, for example, because I'm a foreigner in this country, to me, migrations and identity and how the landscapes we are born and we lived in and formed the first part of our life, really, I feel really shape us, was a really important thing to talk about it. So we created a performance called Landscapes of the Heart at the time, which brought together the stories of 6 people that had come to London from the gutters. So they were not coming to London easy peasy, but for various reasons, either because there was a war in their country, because they needed to migrate. In that case, I came to London of my own choice, And then that was a collaboration with Piano Circus. They were a sextet who worked with music. They were working with new music. Max Richter, the superstar Max Richter composer, was one of the founders of the 6 Piano Circus. And they played with their pianos and interlocked their music exactly as we played physically in our performances. And we had 4 of them work with us with suspended pianos. And I took that as a homage to, I don't know if you've ever seen Wim Wenders' film, Wings of Desire, where you've got the angels. They are yes, real, they're dressed like men, but they are angels that basically protect people. And that was the idea. As I say, forests, I was brought up in the countryside near the mountains. So how we preserve our environment has always been a very important topic for us. Then when Naisa became a teenager, at the same time, we managed to convince the Wellcome Trust to fund us to do a research with a project that was happening. So at that point, Wellcome, the super, is the Wellcome Trust, biomedical trust, had a fund that brought together artists and scientists. And they had just funded a project between Cambridge University and UCL in which they were bringing neuroscientists and psychologists and psychiatrists together, which you would think they talked to each other, but they didn't before. And, and studying the healthy development of the teenage brain. And then it went further years later in looking from there at when the brain has been modified because of traumas. So we worked with 3 of the best, neuroscientists, psychiatrists in the country that believed us. that came and tried those platforms that we were working. If you look on our website at Depths of My Mind,
I watched it today, actually. I watched that video today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
I know what you're
dynamic.
talking.
That's great. And we created those, is one of the apparatus. We created those transparent platforms, and the audience were in the middle, so everything was happening on top of them. They were really like in the head and the heart of those 4 teenagers. And what we really wanted was to create 4 stories that showed that, yes, teenagerhood is an explosive age, but it's also so full of energy, of potential, not just of loneliness, not just of knife crime and all of that. So that was that. And then you may have noticed Emerging, our last production. So Soren and I have a trans son. So that was quite a journey, a personal journey in the last 4 years. And it also Naisa came out publicly quite at the beginning of lockdown. So it was a double whammy of living in a world that we didn't know before. And you're the one I always define as a daughter, defining themselves as a son. And so we, although we saw each other all the time, we started to write letters to each other, because sometimes we just couldn't listen properly to each other. And out of those letters, we created Emerging, which was created as a piece of advocacy and to families that have lived a story like ours. And we also created a film, a stage to screen adaptation when we finished the tour. It took an incredible amount of courage and bravery to do it. But our impulse was also that you never hear the real voices. You never hear in the media the real voices of the trans young people and the parents of trans young people. And, it's a process where you fall and you get up and you fall and you get up all the time. We felt was so important to create a piece that people have defined as beautiful, but also created a strong empathy. Also because as a parent of a trans young person, one of my biggest fear is it safe in the world? Are there places where he can go? And that felt like a very strong. It had to be done. It was, I think, one of our best work, but also one of the absolutely most difficult and complex work I've ever done in my career. Also because we bared ourselves, our heart naked, and our mind, not our bodies, but all the rest is there.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's beautiful to see that kind of evolution of your work, but then one that journeys into your own hearts and your own personal stories. And just to be able to have to put that on stage is such a brave thing to do, because like you said, it is such an exposure. So I truly believe the people that are given that story to tell are the ones to tell it, right? So congratulations on that. I must go watch the movie. I did see it on your website, the link to it or something, but I haven't watched it yet. And
I need to send you a link on that, because we only put it out the full 40 minutes, because clearly we did a film adaptation. The performance was an hour long. So I can send you, or to your PA, the link with the password, because at the moment it's not out for public consumption. We usually reopen it out when there are specific period like Trans Awareness Months, or if there is a specific times where we want to do a support. But I will send it.
I would love to see that. Thank you so much for sharing. I get the privilege.
And Anna.
So we always finish our podcast with the similar questions for each of our guests. So we're going to ask them now. What is your most favorite thing about your job or the industry?
Well, one of my favorite things, which I think it exists a lot in people doing contemporary circus and using extreme physicality and physical theater, is the true level of collaboration. I really think that there is a very deep connection that has to be there because of the work, but also has to be there because it's so hard that we need to believe in it. I think that web of connection is really there to support us. And because we support each other with what we bring out to an audience, hopefully can also be a vehicle of supporting some of our audience. I think art has a real healing power. And I think if the connection with our audience is really truthful, it does create this energy and healing power. So that is what keeps me going in my moments of major challenge, of desperation that there are sometimes, or when you think, you just receive a no from a funder and you think, what? Have we not demonstrated enough what we do? So that was saying what is my favorite part of my job. And the second question was?
Wasn't stated yet, but the second question is, what would you change?
What would I change? What would I change is a government and various governments that are not really supporting neither culture, not education, and not health, public health, as they should. I think if, who knows, we will have election at some point in UK again. Perhaps we manage to move something, but without entering into any political issue, which I don't want, but I do really feel that through culture, we don't only inspire people, but we nurture people. And yes, if I could change something, is to allocate the resources that are needed, both to the arts, to the education, public education that is really struggling, and also the public health.
I love that. I love that answer to that question. Thank you so much, Daniela, for spending some time with us here on the Theatre Art Life podcast. It's been a true pleasure to hear about your work and your company and your artistic vision for you and your life. So thank you.
Thank you to you.
Theatre Art Life is a global media site for entertainment. Memberships start at only $38 per year. You can have unlimited access to our daily published articles, including entertainment news and the writings of active industry professionals, ensuring that you are always up to date on the global happenings in the world of entertainment. Become a part of the international entertainment community and join us now at www.theatreartlife.com.